stand up on the edge of the pew and start. That'd get everybody's attention after I broke my neck. So tonight I do not have handouts. I will have next week, but tonight I ran out of time, to be honest. So I'll do my best, though, because I'm taking kind of a broad, general approach to things. But as usual, next week when I give you my notes, there will be much more details as far as Old Testament scriptures and things for you to look up on your own. So it's not just me telling you this, but it's actually what the scripture is indicating. So next week you'll have more papers to hang on to. So I'm sorry about that. I'm going to go ahead and pray, and so we can get going. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for a break from the heat. It was very, very, very much appreciated. And I am glad that you do care about the little things as well as the big things. And I just ask that you be with us tonight as we return to the revelation you gave John, that you would help us to have discernment, to have wisdom, and most of all, to take it to heart, the message of endurance and protection that you have promised. And we do look forward to the coming of your Son. And we ask these things in his name. Amen. All right. So, I want to recap just a little bit. This is just so we can maintain continuity. One of my, I guess, main ideas when I study Scripture is I'm very much a proponent of the continuity of Scripture, meaning that it all fits together. It's all one mega story, if you want to look at it that way, made up of a bunch of smaller stories, but they all interlock together to tell the big story. And hopefully by now you're seeing that you see the same pattern within the vision that God gave John. You have lots of small visions, so to speak, different visions, but they all are linked together into one grand vision. And so continuity is something I want to try to maintain. And so we've gone through the series of 7 seals and 7 trumpets. And tonight we're going to begin moving into what I call the 7 signs. Now, most of your Bibles, if you have the section headings, like a lot of Bibles will have, there may be headings for the 7 trumpets and for the 7 seals, but there may not be a heading that says the 7 signs. And this is because the wording, how it's worded, the 7 seals are easy to determine because they're very obvious. It states the first seal, when he opened the first seal, when he opened the second seal. So we have those very literal markers. Same way with the trumpets, and the angel with the first trumpet blew, and then something happened, and then the second trumpet, and the third trumpet. When you get to the signs, the literary clues are there, you just have to look for them. They're not overtly obvious like the seals and the trumpets are. So there'll be phrases like, "and then I saw," in repetition. And when you do that, you find 7. There's 7 smaller visions. I say smaller simply because they're not the whole vision. And each one of them is different in some of its details, the images that are used. But you're going to see that they are similar in the message being portrayed. And just like when you compare the 7 seals as a group and the 7 trumpets as a group, they're indicating the same historical events, the same historical pattern, but they're emphasizing a different area, a different subtlety. And this continues with the 7 signs. So tonight we're really just going to look at, I believe, 3 of them out of the 7. And so hopefully as we move through, this will become clearer to you what I'm getting at with the continuity that we see here. I'm sorry, is there somebody? I thought I heard somebody tell my name. I'm sorry. So the 7 visions or the 7 signs, this is how they are broken out. So I'm giving you all 7 of them and the general references in the text where they occur. It takes up all of chapter 12, 13, 14, and the first 4 verses of 15. And so the first one, the vision is of a conflict of a serpent or a dragon with a woman and her seed. That's one of them we're going to look at tonight. The second one indicates a persecution by a beast that rises from the sea. We're also going to look at that one tonight. The third vision involves another beast that arises from the land. So those first 3 we will look at this evening. But then the fourth one is centered upon the Lamb and the 144,000. So it's drawing our attention back to something that happened during the seals. The 5th sign is a proclamation of the gospel and judgment by 3 angels. Then the 6th sign involves the Son of Man's command that the earth be harvested. And then the final sign is the saints' victory over the beast of the sea and their victory song. Following these 7 signs, the vision resumes with the 7 bowls, the 7 bowl judgments. And so that's kind of getting us in our position of where we are at. And so looking at the continuity of how we've come so far is the visions that we're getting ready to look at reveal in more detail the spiritual conflict between the church and the unbelieving world. This has already been developed in the first 11 chapters in various ways, but that's kind of the center conflict that's being portrayed, is the church standing in subjection to being persecuted by the world system, the nations of the world, the unbelieving world. So the 7 letters, remember the 7 letters to the churches, this conflict is revealed as one in which Christians are tempted to compromise in various ways. Remember that from the letters in the churches. When Jesus would find things against them, it usually involved compromise. These temptations, though, were revealed to come from both outside the church and from within. This is very important because we're going to see this again tonight. The church is tempted from outside persecution and from inward compromise. The two are working together. Same mind driving both of them. And then we moved from the letters to the seals. The 7 seals revealed that the spiritual forces of evil are unleashed against believer and unbeliever alike by angels who are acting in direct response to Christ himself. Then when we got to the trumpets revealed that these demonic forces of judgment are sent forth to punish humanity. So you're seeing the same historical time period from the time of Christ's ascension to the Father until he returns. That's our range of time. There are passages that are interspersed throughout all of this that demonstrate God's protection, God's spiritual protection over his church. Not physical necessarily, but spiritual. The church will suffer terribly in the physical sense, but they will be secured spiritually. They're protected from that second death. This is allowed, God permits this for the sake of purification. That's why he's permitting us to go through this. We call it sanctification. We call it suffering. We call it purification. It's all the same. We are being transformed into the likeness of Christ. That's the purpose. Christ suffered obediently by the will of the Father to accomplish the Father's will. Now we are being called by Christ to suffer for the sake of Christ to accomplish the will of Christ. That's the pattern. Chapter 12 is a hinge. It's the center of Revelation. It's the center of the vision. So that one image, that one sign that we're going to look at tonight forms the centerpiece. So chapters 12 through 22 are telling the same story as chapters 1 through 11, but in greater detail. We're being provided a little bit more. Each vision gives us a little bit more and a little bit more. Think of the word revelation, the unveiling, the unfolding. If you take a piece of paper and you fold it back and forth like a fan. So imagine opening those folds one at a time. And each time you open one, you're revealing more of that full piece of paper that you have. If you just open the one, you're just getting a little bit revealed. But if you open the other, a little more is revealed. And you open another, then another, then another. That's what Revelation is doing. God is giving John, he's unfolding it, a piece at a time. But it's one event. It's one history. So we're going to begin reading in chapter 12. This is the first sign. And a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was pregnant and was crying out in birth pains and the agony of giving birth. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his head 7 diadems. His tail swept down 1/3 of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she bore her child, he might devour it. She gave birth to a male child, one who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. But her child was caught up to God and to his throne, and the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, in which she is to be nourished for 1,260 days. Now war arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon. And the dragon and his angels fought back, but he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the entire world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. And I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brothers has been thrown down, who accuses them day and night before our God. And they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. For they loved not their lives even unto death. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to you, O earth and sea. For the devil has come down to you in great wrath, because he knows that his time is short. And when the dragon saw that he had been thrown down to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. But the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly from the serpent into the wilderness, to the place where she is to be nourished for a time and times and half a time. The serpent poured water like a river out of his mouth after the woman to sweep her away with a flood. But the earth came to the help of the woman. And the earth opened its mouth and swallowed the river that the dragon had poured from his mouth. Then the dragon became furious with the woman and went off to make war on the rest of her offspring, those who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus. And he, the dragon, stood on the sand of the sea. So I wanted to read that entire sign. That's the first one. The woman and the dragon. 2 characters. The dragon is identified immediately. Very clearly identified. That great serpent, called a serpent and a dragon. The woman is often ascribed to be the nation of Israel, which is correct. Obviously, when you read the very beginning, the woman clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet, 12 stars representing the 12 tribes, and who she gave birth to, the way he's described. No mistake here of who this is, right? Jesus was born out of Israel, right? He was born a Jewish man, according to the law, from a Jewish man and a woman. You know, he followed all the laws were followed. So in that sense, faithful Israel gave birth, in a sense, to Messiah. Now, obviously, this is not literal, but you can see the analogy, right? So far, so good? All right. But what's happening here is there's a shift in who this woman represents, because you see towards the end of this passage, this woman is now, the child is back in heaven with God. Satan continues to pursue her, and then suddenly he turns his attention to who? Yeah. The dragon became furious with the woman and went off to make war on the rest of her offspring. What other offspring does Israel have? Yeah. God's people, exactly. This is remember your new covenant. So let me put it together. So the woman represents the messianic community, God's people, God's true people, throughout the ages. Initially, this community consisted of the faithful remnant of Israel. They faithfully looked forward to and, quote, gave birth to Messiah. This remnant was protected by God from all attempts of Satan to destroy Israel before the Messiah could be birthed from her. This is righteous Israel. The occurrence of 1260 days we've talked about before. It indicates not necessarily a 3.5-year literal period of time, but it's an indication of it has a determined beginning and end. There is an end to it. It's not the fullness of time. There's some end to this. You see this in Daniel 7, Daniel 9, Daniel 12. You see this in the wilderness experience of Exodus, which was 42 encampments. You see the wilderness as a place of spiritual sanctuary, but physical hardship. You see the connections between what Revelation is talking about the church going through and what Israel went through after they left Egypt, going through the wilderness. How many of them made it? How many of them were faithful that originally left Egypt? 2 adults. Now, children, yeah, the children came. Remember that's what happened to them? They got all the way up to the kingdom and freaked out, except for Joshua and Caleb. And God said, fine, everybody 40 years and older is going to die out here in the rocks, except for Caleb and Joshua. But all your children, who you are so concerned about, thinking that the wilderness and these giants were going to eat them, they are going to go into the land, but you're not. So there's a type there of our journey as Christians, and in Revelation, the call for the church, endure. For how long? Till I tell you not to, till the end. You know, and Paul warns about this all through his letters. Paul uses the same analogy. He said, all of them who left Egypt, they all were under the cloud. They all saw the fire. They all went through the river, through the water, but not all of them made it. Why? Because of unbelief. And so this same situation is playing out in Revelation as the church is being described. But this woman, initially, this is righteous, faithful Israel that God preserved because he made a promise to Abraham that there will be a nation come from him, and from that nation the seed would come and all nations would be blessed through him. So that's what we're seeing at the beginning of this vision. After Messiah completed his work of redemption and was received back to heaven, the woman continues to represent the Messianic community. But now, that consists of a remnant from all nations. It's still the righteous remnant. It's just expanded to include all nations and not just Israel. Satan could not destroy Messiah, so his wrath turns to the followers of Messiah. As God protected the faithful remnant of Israel before the coming of Messiah, so now he protects the faithful remnant of the nations. That's us. Again, the mention of 1,260 days is stated differently, but it's the same 3.5 time period. It's the assurance that, yes, you are suffering terribly. The dragon hates you. Jesus said, they will hate you. But remember, they hated me first. So this should not be anything surprising, anything new. It's just the language of it throws us off because we're not used to thinking in these images. But you peel the images back, it's very clear what this sign is trying to show the church. is it said, you are now a member of the community that I have been protecting from the beginning of time, since I made the promise to Abraham. Think about all the ways in which the line to Messiah could have been blocked. All the stories of Abraham that Brother Seth's been talking about, the slip-ups that Abraham made that could have ended it. It could have ended the line. Sarah, she's my sister. What if Pharaoh had had relations with her? It would have contaminated the line. It wouldn't have been from Abraham. What if the other guy, Abimelech, I can't think of his name. Same thing. What if he, there were very serious threats. Where were those? Now Jesus is opening the veil and saying, you know where those threats were coming from? From the dragon. He knew something was up. He was the one that was there when God says he's going to stomp your head flat. Who is? We imagine Eve going, well, it's one of mine. It's coming from me. So everyone born from Eve. So who motivated the murder of Abel? The dragon. Because of the promise of the seed. So this is awesome to see this sign in that context, how it plays out. Thoughts? Your guys just, it's not me, that's me just yapping. What's going through your all's mind?
Is there a connection between this passage and also Genesis 37 with Joseph and his dream of the sun and moon and like the stars circling around him?
That's the similar image of, it's an image that is derived, it's Israel. It's the way Israel is represented. And it's the angelic, it's similar to, you had angelic representation of the seven churches, the seven stars, an angel representing each church. There was an angel, same idea, there was an angel representing each of the 12 tribes. And so there's definitely that connection of the image itself. And the problem comes in the problem of interpretation comes in when you try to make this woman remain Israel all the way through the vision. And that doesn't work. It's more than that. God doesn't care if you're a Jew or not. He didn't care if you were a Jew back then. Were you faithful? It's always been that. He doesn't care if you're an American or a Russian or a Ukrainian. He doesn't give a rip about that. What have you done with my son? That's his that's his community now. Remnant from all the nations being brought together into one nation. A nation of priests. So he's reversing Babel. I'll steal Dr. Heiser's title. Reversing Babel. What happened at Babel when the nations were formed and scattered? Now God's started at Pentecost and started bringing them back. But you have to come back through faith. Anybody else? While I pause, give you a chance. Otherwise, I'll take off again. I just think this is the largest of the signs. It's the first of the signs, and remember, it forms the spine of this whole revelation. It's the centerpiece, and it tells the whole story. So, anybody else? Last chance. It's like an auction. Going once, going twice. All right. So let's read on. Another sign. And I saw a beast. This is chapter 13, the very first verse. And I saw a beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads. Who else had that? Just like the dragon. Right?
Is that in Daniel?
In Daniel. Yeah, you'll see it in Daniel.
That's a Leviathan.
Not yet. But yeah, there's this beast 10 diadems or crowns on its horns, and blasphemous names on all of its heads. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard. Its feet were like a bear. Its mouth was like a lion's mouth. And to it, the dragon gave his power and his throne and great authority. One of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed, and the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast. And they worshiped the dragon, for he had given his authority to the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast, and who can fight against it?" And the beast was given a mouth uttering haughty and blasphemous words, and it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. There's that same time period again. It opened its mouth to utter blasphemies against God, blaspheming his name and his dwelling, that is, those who dwell in heaven. Also, it was allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them. And authority was given it over every tribe and people and language and nation. And all who dwell on earth will worship it, everyone whose name has not been written from the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slain. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. If anyone is to be taken captive, to captivity he goes. If anyone is to be slain with the sword he must be slain. Here is a call for the endurance and faith of who? The saints. This last part in yellow is the appropriate response for the church to the actions that were depicted in the first verses. So we have this marvelous, marvelous beast rising up out of the sea, the same chaotic maelstrom that the dragon came out of. A lot of Old Testament imagery there. The sea dragon, the chaos monster, Rahab, the serpent. Lots of names. Same guy, same thing. God's mortal enemy. God's a God of order. Satan's the God of chaos. He wants to destroy everything. This beast, this beast we're looking at now that comes up out of the sea, is given, I highlighted some things here, allowed, authority was given to it. He's not acting on his own. Two things going on here. The dragon is granting him, this beast, authority. Who gave the dragon authority? God. He turned it over to Satan, the ruler of this age, the kingdom of the world, the kingdoms that are oppressing Christians from the beginning of the time of the church. Paul said we're not fighting against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. And it's the spirit. This is showing the spiritual side of the opposition to the church. This beast is representing the state, the human state, governments, empires, all through history. You could say, well, was this Rome? Yes. Well, was this Germany in 1939? Yes. Is this America in 2026? Yes. Every government is under the grip. This beast is a representative of all of them. Not just one single one that's going to be worse than them all of them. Satan gives them his authority, gives them power, gives them the ability to overcome the church on the outward, what it looks like. But our response to all of this is right here. That first part is basically saying, if it be God's will that you die, then you will die. If it be being taken captive, if it is God's will that you be taken captive, that one of his children gets taken captive, then that child will be taken captive. It's the resolution that we should have of realizing that God's in control of this, even though it's terrible. Remember the promise. Our eternal soul is secure. Can't be touched. Just like Job. Don't touch him. So Satan couldn't. Next time he came in, God says, okay, you can touch him, but don't kill him. And he couldn't. So it's that same, it's hard to understand. Why would God even permit that much? But remember, God is faithful. His purpose is to make us into the likeness of his Son. He sent his Son to the cross, beaten with beyond recognition, which was completely unnecessary. I mean, if he wanted him to die, just kill him. You know, but it's the suffering all the way to the cross. So if his own Son was willing, and Hebrews talks about it, he looked past it. He looked past the suffering to the joy that lay on the other side. Because he knew, once I do through this, all humanity will have the opportunity to return to their Creator. And that's worth it. So we as Christians are to be doing the same thing. We're to be looking through the suffering to the joy on the other side, where God says, well done, my good and faithful servant. You know, we are following in the footsteps of Christ. This is what it really means when he said, you are not mine if you don't take up your cross and follow after me. That's total and complete surrender, no matter what is in between us and the end. So this beast from the sea, the description of this beast is a retelling in further detail the nature of the dragon's persecution of the church. It's another fold being opened up. We know the dragon is angry at the Messianic community. He can't get Christ, so he's coming after us. And God's like, go for it. Give it your best shot. They're not going to turn against me. I'm sure God, when they were this, God's like, you remember Job? Are you that thick-skulled that you forgot about Job? And so, though Satan has been defeated, he is still permitted to oppress the church for a time. Remember that time, times, and half a time. There's an end to it. There's a limit to it. So the next section, the part where it's talking about this beast from the sea, is describing one of the agents through whom Satan executes his persecution. Human governments, human authorities, powers, dominions. They're being driven by spiritual forces. They're still guilty. They're still acting. They're doing this of their own volition. But they're empowered. You might wonder, like, how in the world does this keep going on like this? This is just stupid. Just watch a political ad. Like, who listens to this garbage? A lot of people do. Because they have the same spirit. Their spirit is bearing witness to spirit just like ours does. That is why evil continues to pervade, is because humanity wants it and accepts it and embraces it. These agents governing political and economic powers of the earth. This chapter draws really heavy off of Daniel 7. And I'll throw this out there, that sometimes interpretations of this section try to go into Daniel 7 and try to make Daniel 7 match what they think is going on in Revelation in the future, when in reality in Daniel 7 it was fulfilled when Christ came. All that timetable was actually fulfilled when Christ came. Revelation is demonstrating that, guess what? This process is repeating now with the followers of Christ. What the opposition to Christ, Daniel saw. He saw, and when Christ came, John is kind of looking back a little bit and then back forward, saying, oh, this is exactly what happened when Satan was trying to stop the coming of Christ. Thought he had won when he killed him, when they crucified Christ. A momentary, but there may have been a celebration for all of 30 seconds until he started thinking about it. Like, wait, that was too easy. I couldn't touch him. His whole ministry, I could not touch the man. And suddenly, I could. He got greedy, I think, and didn't think. But John is seeing the same events of Daniel 7, but now being fulfilled through the church's suffering. The same kingdoms. In Daniel, you had Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. These were the four kingdoms that ruled over Israel until the time of Messiah came. These are the kingdoms that God permitted his people to suffer under. That's why they're highlighted. Started with Babylon when they went into exile. The spirit of those four kingdoms lives on. So you can use the same image to represent kingdoms today. You don't have to limit it to just, oh, that was Rome, and then try to extract Rome into our political system and do all sorts of weird convolutions. No, how about you just say human governments are evil? All of them. God never intended for man to rule over man. It was a concession, because otherwise we'd have murdered each other by now, even with all this. So I think looking at reading Daniel 7 in light of Revelation, going back and forth rather than attempting to jam things in there that's not there. But so this is one beast. This guy called the Antichrist, which we'll see him had named it, not named like literally named, but the term Antichrist. Is he an individual? Yes. Is he a corporate entity? Yes. Is there more than one of them? Yes. Any person who is against God is Antichrist. John makes that pretty clear. The spirit of Antichrist is here. So you can have both. When speaking of the beast, is it an individual or is it a conglomeration of governments? And like, yes, 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 and yes. If it's a human government opposed to God and his kingdom, yes, it fits. If it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. So what the dragon was described as doing in chapter 12 against the woman, he is actually doing through his servants that we're seeing now. We're seeing the first one, the human governmental systems. In Job, and I think this is what Isaac was alluding to a little bit. He was talking. You guys may not have heard him, but he mentioned Leviathan and Behemoth that are described in Job 40 and 41. These two beasts are believed to be representations of the beast that John saw in his vision. One, the beast from the sea, and then the next one, which we'll look at, the beast from the land. I'll leave it to you to read those 2 chapters on your own, but some things you look at here is Job is describing, in Job, there's an allusion to the primordial defeat of the dragon, the sea dragon, by God. But it also implies a future battle. And so this is necessitated by these beasts continually resisting God. So were they real beasts, or were they representative of something spiritual? And again, I would say yes and yes. Again, you can do that. You know how images work. You can assign characteristics to, you see a person and how they act and how they talk, and you say, yeah, they're acting like a donkey or something like that. And we do it all the time. Just these images are terrible because God is trying to get us to see how terrible these things are. We want to try to go up and comb the beast and calm the beast and maybe convince the beast to give us Christians a little leeway. You don't do that.
That's kind of what
It'll eat you.
that's what God told Job too. After he had been enduring all that stuff that the beast had given him.
Yeah.
Can you draw him in with a bow and make a covenant with him to make him your servant?
Exactly. And that's God basically told Job, who can do this? Can a man, grab him with a hook and lead him around like you would a cow? And the insinuation is, no, Job, I, God, must deal with the beast myself. You, and this is to the church, and I think it's alluded to here, the church, leave them. You're not going to change the nature. You can't, like I said, a zebra can't change his stripes. The beast cannot change because it's driven by the dragon, and the dragon is not going to change. So Job is a good, and there's also some other references in the Old Testament. So let's read about the third. I call the dragon a beast too, but the third beast is continuing on right after in chapter 13. Is then I saw another beast rising out of the earth. So not the sea this time, out of the earth. Notice the differences. It had 2 horns, like a lamb. Think on that one a second. But it spoke like a dragon. Where have we seen the lamb before? In the throne room, the Lamb of God. 2 horns. Or not 2, yeah. Not 2, he had more, 7. Looked like a lamb, but he speaks like the dragon. I'll let you guys put that image together. Wolf in sheep's clothing? How do you find out? Pinch it. See if it howls or baas. It exercises all the authority of the first beast in its presence, meaning they're together. In its presence, meaning they're together. And makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose mortal wounds was healed. That first beast didn't care a whit. This one's got a different approach. It performs great signs. Even makes fire come down from heaven to earth in front of people. And by the signs that it is allowed to work in the presence of the beast, it what? Deceives those who dwell on the earth, telling them to make an image for the beast that was wounded by the sword and yet lived. See all the allowing in this one too, just like with the other one? And it was allowed to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast might even speak and cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. Also, it causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, that is, the name of the beast or the number of his name. This one also has a warning. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. People have lost their bloomin' minds over this. I'll say this nicely. It tells you, it's telling the church, I don't care what kind of signs this thing does. I don't care how eloquently this thing speaks. I don't care how greasy he is. Church, don't listen to him. He's just a man. Just under, 666, just under. There's been calculated, oh, that was Nero. If you take the numbers and you do this, that was a code name for Nero. It probably was at the time. Yeah, you could apply it. I mean, you want to run numbers with Hebrew letters, you can make it say lots of things. But yeah, but keep our bearings here. The first beast was a generic, idea of any government, all governments, all throughout history that are performing evil acts, oppressing God's people, just evil in nature, driven by the dragon. This one's no different. It's a different beast. But this one is doing the same thing. It's representative of something, another aspect of Satan's agency. What do you think it is? You have this, we've already covered about government and political systems. What do you think this one?
It sounds to me like false religion.
Yes. This is the religious side. This is the unholy trinity. Satan is mocking everything. You have Satan, the false prophet, and the beast. The unholy trinity. He's mocking. Why does it look at it? It was a lamb. Looks like a lamb. Looks like a lamb. Until you hear it speak. This is the this is the persecution from within the church. The other beast operates from outside the church, blaspheming God openly. Makes no effort to try to deceive anybody. I hate God and everything he's associated with it. I'm going to kill every one of you. That kind of attitude. I don't care if you know it, I'm coming. You can't stop me. This guy, this is more of the religious system that's acting on behalf of those governments, saying, those Christians are tricky. They're a bullheaded lot. They'd rather die. And what good is that? They just go home. I know. Let's work within the religious systems. And this doesn't mean Hinduism. This means within Christianity. He's mimicking the Lamb. So I've heard people say, oh, that's the Catholic Church. In its history, at certain, yes, parts of it, that's also the Baptist Church in parts of its history. Well, pet peeve of mine, Southern Baptist. Southern. Where'd that name come from? The Civil War, before the Civil War. We want to keep our slaves. So we're breaking off of the rest of the Baptists. We are now the Southern Baptists. Fought a war over it. Civil War, Baptists murdering Baptists, Catholics murdering Catholics, Presbyterians murdering Presbyterians, Methodists murdering Methodists over being able to own somebody. Both calling upon the name of God to slay their enemies. The righteous, the Crusades. We want to go where Christianity turned rogue and started, we just murder all of them. We're doing God a favor. So that kind of thing. But it's also more subtle than this. It took the Southern Baptist Convention over 100 years to acknowledge that they made an error. 1980s is when they finally made a proclamation that what happened during the Civil War might have been a bad thing, and we need to say we're sorry for acting like we did back then. But we're going to keep Southern on there because, I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but yes.
I might be going off track, but what I get out of this is if we go back to the very beginning of Satan when he was cast out of heaven, all he wanted was power over everything.
Yeah.
That's why.
Satan wants the worship that belongs to God. He has a burr in his saddle about us in the position that God put us in when he created us. So yeah, there's a definite hatred, and he will do whatever it takes. This is why I'm big on studying Scripture, understanding what it actually says, because there is so much garbage being put forward in the name of Christianity. Bible studies all over YouTube, books galore, that's teaching utter nonsense. But what makes it even worse is it's drawing Christians into the state, into the other beast, to worship that beast. This is why you have Christian denominations splitting right down the middle over stupid Democrat versus Republican nonsense. Same beast. It's an elephant's head on a horse's back. It's the same system. And we think we can go up and placate one or the other of them. And that's what this beast wants us to do. That's its whole role. They're working together on Satan's behalf to oppose God's kingdom, to oppose his people, to destroy his people.
Is the
Yeah.
reference to the mortal wound that's healed a reference to Satan's existence after the resurrection?
Maybe. The mortal wound is what her question was about, and that's another area that there's, oh my goodness, there are so many, theories and ideas, and it's intentionally vague, I think, and so this is just what I tend to do. So I'm not saying this is correct or not, but I look at it as it's another one of those miraculous signs being perpetrated, because that would impress me. If someone's arm fell off and somebody walked up and stuck it back on, I'd be like, wow, that's cool. I mean, but if then they started saying, hey, you need to come worship me instead of God, I was like, well, I don't care what you just did. But other people might not do that. They might go, oh, and it tempts people. So I kind of chalk it up to it's intentionally vague, maybe. Now, again, that's just how I view that particular thing. There's lots of good theories, as to what it could be, like a kingdom that fell because one of the horns, getting broken off and all that stuff. All very good ideas. It's just, to me, it takes away from the big picture of what this beast is doing. Yeah.
Another thing you see is, if you look at the early Christians in the first, second century, one thing that they did when they were hauled up before, Colosseum to be killed by lions or burned or whatever, the pagans said a real Christian would never swear allegiance to Caesar. And that whole concept, like Polycarp or Pete was following up before there. Say Caesar is Lord. Because you believe you're an atheist, because you don't believe that a man is God and needs to be worshipped. You see a similar thing happen though, that's like without. You'll see the same thing. It reminded me of that Martin Luther when he was hauled up for preaching, the New Testament to people. Recant the gospel of Jesus Christ and swear your allegiance back to the church.
Yeah.
Or face death.
Yeah.
You see that throughout. It's always about where is your allegiance at.
And that's where, you know,
A true Christian cannot
we cannot swear allegiance to anything or anyone save Christ. It's a dangerous, slippery slope, to use an old preacher's term. That slippery slippery slope. You don't think, oh, I can handle this, until you catch a rock wrong, and next thing you know, you're going 90 miles an hour down the hill sideways, and you can't stop until you hit something hard. So yeah, you see throughout the church history, whenever they would be brought in front of governments, even the Inquisition, when it was the church doing it because you didn't agree with their particular thing, recant what you say, take back what you say. All you got to do is say Caesar is Lord. That ain't going to hurt you. Pay the stupid penalty and say Caesar is Lord and go about your business. And they would have they preferred to die in those times. And we look at it and go, wow, what was that all about? Because they understood what they were being asked to do. For them, it was not just the thing, well, I can say whatever I want. God will forgive me. He knows I don't mean it. It's the witness. Be my faithful witnesses. So if I say, well, I don't know if I saw that or not, I'm not being a faithful witness. If I saw it, I say I saw it. If it happened, and this is what I saw. You know, and that's the affront against Christianity is, you know, now Satan's not real, hell's not real, because those are just concepts. You guys need to chill on this Jesus-only stuff. Jesus himself just taught to be nice to people. He was just teaching for a new social order. If we just follow that, I don't know why you guys have to be so gory about it all the time. And it wears you down. Or we say, well, you know, maybe they're, well, you know, it's idolatry. And that's, oops, my battery just died, but that's okay. Just telling me to stop. Pretty good timing, wasn't it? But it's the idea, you know, again, go back to the letters to the churches and how Jesus viewed compromise. He used very harsh language. I'm going to take your lampstand away. I will come and make war against you with the sword of my mouth. Those are not, now guys, you know, those are very serious, because Jesus takes it very serious of this idea of compromise, and it's the analogy of aligning ourselves. And there's lots of subtleties to this. So I can almost hear the thoughts, because they're in my own mind too, and I think about how does this actually work? Because we live in this weird country where our civic duty involves being involved in voting and trying to influence government for good. You know, if you're a Christian, and there's nothing wrong with attempting to influence individuals who are in government to make the right choice. There's nothing wrong, and so I hope you're not hearing that. But later on, we're going to see a cry from heaven in Revelation that says, "Come out of her, my people." It was the same cry Jesus gave to the residents of Jerusalem when he knew that in a few short years, Jerusalem was going to be destroyed, and he warned them about it. And he said, when you see this, get out. Grab whatever you can, get out, because it's going to be bad. And he warned them about it. And you see a similar thing in the world where I think Jesus is crying to us, get out of the world system. If you've gotten entangled in it, you better start extracting yourself. And that's up to you. That's in your individual, where you're at, is in your thoughts and your actions and all of that. And honestly, it's not something I have completely figured out myself and worked out just what it looks like. I don't think it means we're supposed to go and build monasteries and hide out somewhere. It's just, but some people think that. They take it very literally, and they're like, we're getting out of this mess. We're not going to worry about let it burn. And I can kind of see, the older I get, I'm like, yeah, I get it. But again, it's a matter of individual choice. So, but the collective thought, and what we can end with, I think, is these three individuals. You have Satan directly influencing religious type systems and the state, the political, governmental type systems in unity. And you can see this in our world if you pay attention. You see it in the past whenever the church would get entangled with a monarchy, and suddenly it became the Holy Roman Emperor, and suddenly the emperor started telling the church what to do. It never ends well when the church starts to mingle. And I guarantee you that the very beginnings of all of those probably had good intentions. They probably thought, hey, this is a way to bring God's kingdom. We can just build it. You know, like, no, I'm building it. And so we have to be prayerful. Ask God, are we entangled? And this is like personal. Am I personally entangled in something that I should be working to extricate myself from quickly? Or is this something I just need to be cautious about, and I can continue, doing what I'm doing, but just being very cautious and very careful? Because the wording here is that religious system encouraged or tempted the church to engage in idolatry with the state system. And I will say that there are individuals that I know are very, very close, if not already there, to worshiping either the Democrat or the Republican Party. It's the only way I can describe it. Because it doesn't matter what they say or what they do, they'll go with it. And these are people sitting in churches. So I can only go by what they say they are. And that frightens me a little bit for their sake. This does not look good. Because neither one of them collectively has the best interest of Christianity at heart. We're just another tool in their box for them to gain power. And so anyway, I'll leave that alone before I get stoned. But I could say that after the election. So yeah. But we got another one. And just something to think about, that what's going on with these systems. And it's been going on from the beginning. But I think, like I said, the birth pains, they're just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. And Christians are going to have to make decisions, I think. We're not protected because we're Americans. Look at other nations. Look at their Christian populations and where they were and where they are, and what brought their downfall. And America has turned its back on any semblance of God a long time. And so every other country that's done that, it hasn't gone well. So anyway, that's my doom and gloom for today. Didn't mean to get into a diatribe there, but that's just your thoughts while we're winding down here. Yes, sir.
Satan is just new day.
Yep.
Everything that God creates, Satan always tries to counterfeit.
Yep.
The Trinity, you see the unholy Trinity there. The number 6 there is just one away from what God calls creation himself.
Mm-hmm.
You had said something earlier, that God gave Satan his power to control over earth. This is just my thought, is that Adam relinquished that control to Satan. It wasn't God that gave it to him. God gave it to man to
Yeah.
Adam relinquished it to Satan whenever he ate of the whatever fruit it was. We depict it as an apple. Probably not. There is a lot of evil in this world. And we, as believers, cannot compromise on what the Word of God says.
Amen.
Because compromise will kill you. But the last scripture that you was reading, allowed to do that, allowed to do that, allowed to do that. We have to stand our ground and push back against the evil in this world. That's what we're called to do. To be the light of this world, to be the salt of this world. It isn't go run and hide in a common room. We're called to be of this world and set apart in this world. And it's a hard line that we have to hold.
Well, and everything you've said, you gave it much the greater detail, which is what I should have done. Yeah, that God's permission is because He gave us that. You're right, that He gave mankind that authority, and mankind handed it over to Satan. So God permitted that because it was ours to give. So yeah, and that's good. I like that. I'm glad because that was, when I heard it, like, yeah, that's what I should have. I left that good part out of there, though. But it's the same now, where God has given us authority, but we can give that authority up. Just like then, we can give our authority back to Satan, should we choose to, and make the same mistake again. In a sense, at least as individuals. And that hurts. That doesn't end well. And it hurts other people. It doesn't just hurt us. It hurts the church itself. So, thank you.
I have a side question. I listened to an interview several years ago between Hilton Salter, Dr. Heiser, and an astronomer, and they rolled back the stars in the sky to about the time of Jesus' birth, and the astrological signs that were in the sky at that time are the same as the woman and the beast.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's, now that we have the technology where we can project star positions and, positions of the moon and the stars and the sun, the planets and all that, and you go back to the approximate time of Jesus' birth and the Virgo constellation, there's an arrangement of where the moon was under it, and it fits the image given to that describes the woman at the very beginning. And I think that's just another verification of where, as our knowledge increases, it's not going to let us escape the reality of God. As our knowledge increases, God keeps getting in our face with stuff like that. Or, things that you read, what in the world, a woman with 12 stars over her head, and you start realizing, oh, it's depicting where the stars and planets were at the moment that Christ was born. And that was the same thing the Magi, they knew more than we do. It took us a couple thousand years to come up with a fancy tool to do this. But and archaeology is doing the same thing. They're finding things one right after, like God is taking away it wouldn't surprise me if we found a chunk of the real ark. Because God's like, I'm going to throw all of this in the world's face. And they're still going to reject me. But it won't be because I didn't try to show them this. So yeah, if you think there's no evidence, and I know our faith is not based on just evidence, but if you want some neat stuff like that, you start digging into some of the archaeology and the finds and the writings and, you know, things like constellations and whatnot, it's pretty cool.
Terry, I have heard some stuff about, like, the ancient people would use the stars to write their stories to pass on to generations. And so this, not only there's verification of that, but then you go into like ancient Chinese writings and even Aztec and Mayan writings, and you can find that there are certain things that have happened in biblical history that match the same time frame in all parts of the world. And it's not just, there's some way they can make it work for right here over Israel. But no, it happened, it really happened. And
The
there's
whole,
evidence that
the whole world saw it.
yeah, exactly. The whole world is seeing it. And as archaeology digs deeper, like you said, there's so much evidence. It's like, how can you not see it, but they have blinders on?
Well, and even, you know, it talks about in Scripture about, and every eye will see him. And I'm thinking something, you know, something else going on. You know, there's going to be God likes to put on big celestial events. You know, it's just kind of cool, I think. But I know we got kiddos and stuff like that, so I want to go ahead and, unless somebody's got something really pressing, but you can come up and I'll be around a while. I'm not going anywhere, but I want to go ahead and so you guys can get your kiddos and they don't, so Stephanie doesn't hang me for going too long. So does somebody want to close us in prayer?